please rise for invocation by Reverend Paul Summers of All Saints Lutheran Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. That's who you said we had down here? Okay. Well, then I guess we're going to do a silent invocation, and keep in mind that Thanksgiving is next week. Let's think of all the things that we're thankful for, as well as the things we need.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilman Bratz? Councilman Bastian?
Here.
Councilman Stillman?
Here.
Vice Mayor Foley? Mayor Burnett?
Present, we have a quorum, albeit barely. We had a couple of people that were planned to travel, but we know that we're going to have a quorum. And right now, I don't need to stall because she just came in. I do have a proclamation that I'd like to present to our Port Orange Chamber of Commerce, and Barbara Ann Hegan just walked in from getting the same treatment in South Daytona. So why don't you come up? I'm going to go ahead and read this into the record, and then I want you to speak to Small Business Saturday.
Yes.
Proclamation, whereas the government of the city of Port, you know what, let me do this to make sure everybody can hear me. Because I know you think this is important, I know this is important, right? Whereas the government of the city of Port Orange celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. And whereas according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 29.6 million small businesses in the United States. They represent 99.9% of the American employer firms, create more than 2/3 of the net new jobs, and generate 46% of private gross domestic product, as well as 54% of all U.S. sales, and employ over 55% of the working population in the United States. And whereas 89% of consumers in the United States agree that small business contributes positively to our local communities by supplying jobs and generating tax revenue, and whereas 93% of consumers in the United States agree that it is important for people to support small businesses that they value in their community, and finally, whereas the City of Port Orange recognizes the Port Orange South Daytona Chamber of Commerce, which supports Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. So therefore, I, Donald O. Burnett, Mayor of the City of Port Orange, Florida, hereby proclaim November 25th of 2023 as Small Business Saturday, and I urge all the residents of our community and the communities across our country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday throughout the year. And with my signature and the seal of the city, it is so declared. Barbara Ann, please tell us a little about the chamber and what you're representing and all these wonderful statistics you gave me for this proclamation.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Mayor Burnett, and good evening, council members. I just wanted to share that we have concluded our leadership program for 2023, and we have graduation tomorrow. And part of their class project was to promote small businesses and to really help be a part of the small business initiative happening across the country. And most certainly we recognize that the City of Port Orange is a valuable partner and has a strong small business community. So we are proud to have passports that we are giving out to businesses on Small Business Saturday, as well as other marketing materials, and we have a strong marketing campaign brought to you by the leadership class of 2023. So thank you very much for recognizing this special event, and we support local.
All right, with that,
Thank
we'll do
you.
that. There's no way we're going to walk away without a picture.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, items 7 through 12 on consent. Do we have any public comments on any of those items? Anybody?
7 through 12.
Then we, can I have Matt, did you have a recommendation on item 9 on the agenda?
Yes, Mayor. On item 9, there have been some revisions since the agenda was originally posted, and I think John is prepared to go over those revisions. This is to those utility rates and miscellaneous fees.
With that, can I get a approval for the agenda for the evening with the removal of item 9 from consent?
So moved.
I'll second, Mayor.
We have a motion second to remove, to approve the agenda for the evening and removing item 9 from consent. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It is so approved. The agenda for the evening. So we need items 7, 8, and 10 through 12 on consent. A motion for approval.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a proper second for the remainder of the consent agenda. Call the roll, please.
Councilman Bastian,
Yes.
Councilman Stillman,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett,
Yes. This is weird to say, 3-0. I guess all it's going to take is 2 people tonight to change the fate of Port Orange forever. You guys need to behave. With that, items 7, 8, 10, 11, and 12 on consent are approved. Item 9 is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, establishing and adopting utility service fees, rates and charges, revised processes, establishing schedule of monthly water charges, establishing schedule of monthly sewer charges, establishing charges and rates for reclaimed water system, providing for severability, providing for repeal of conflicting resolutions, and providing an effective date.
Move to approve resolution number 23-26.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a proper second. The item is open on the floor for discussion. Wayne, who do we have?
John McKinney will go over the changes.
Mayor, Council, how are you this evening?
Excellent, sir.
In going through this item with Rafa Tillis, the rate consultant that went through this, we went through it again front to back this morning, and we found a couple of items that when we got rid of the strike through underline for the clean copy, found a couple of items, so I just wanted to go through them quickly. Under development fee schedule, water and sewer service, we phased in the overall development fees, but on the per count fees under item 3, we did not phase those in. So those fees have been reduced from $138.40 to $111.60 and $103.80 to $83.70 respectfully.
And John, you may want to just use page numbers so that.
Okay, perfect. On page 2, which is item, I was discussing, on page 2, item A3. Okay.
That was, and if I remember correctly, that during the workshop was the item the council asked to have phased in, related to it.
Yes, sir. Because the increase was greater than 25%, it has to be phased in equally over 4 years
Okay.
per year. Then on page 5, under item B, under deposits, for a 3-inch meter, what we saw as a 5 was a 0. So it goes from $1,058 for a 3-inch to $1,008.
Okay.
Okay. On page 7, what got struck on item F regarding tampering of a water meter, where we had the fee of $115. It was supposed to state the fine amount for tampering in violation of section 74-40 shall be 3 times the service plus $115. So
Okay.
that it has, some bite to, tampering with our meters.
To strongly discourage it.
Absolutely. Page 10, section 15A. If you'll recall, Rafa Tillis went through adding an extra block in there from the 6,001 gallon to 12,000 gallons. That got omitted. So that goes in there, and the new block 3 would be 6,001 gallons to 12,000 gallons for a $5.43 per 1,000 gallon rate. And then for the old block 3, which is now 4, it remains at the 12,001 to 18,000 gallons at $6.88 per 1,000 gallons. Then if you'll look a little bit further down, under item B1, some of the items didn't get removed, and you see a combination of a couple of numbers, so I'll read it. Inside the city limits of Port Orange, the minimum monthly charge shall be $10.17 for each equivalent unit, plus usage billed at $3.30 per 1,000 gallons. Okay. On page 12, the same thing. It didn't include the block 3, and it actually had the 2025 rates. So the rates should be on item E1 for block 1 $1.52, block 2 $3.99, block 3 $5.43, block 4 $6.88, and block 5 $11.01. So that's a decrease
That's better.
across the board for all of those rates. And on that also, on all of this, we did get the revised backup to go from Raffatilis to go with this as well. Page 14, section E1, same thing. It had the 2025 rate, so it should be 12. I'll read it from the beginning. Inside the city limits of Port Orange, the minimum monthly charge shall be $12.37 for each unit, plus usage billed at $4.60 per 1,000 gallons. So again, both of those are a reduction.
And the reduction is from what was posted, not a reduction from
No.
current rate, just
Yeah.
to be
No,
clear
no,
on the
re-
record.
It's a reduction. It had the 2025 rate for implementation, which would have been January 1st of 2025, and we put it at the rate which should have been at January 1st of 2024, and Raffatilis provided the revised schedule to
Reflecting the-
reflect.
the
They just
phased
had it
approach
one
to-
over, so that's been rectified.
Okay.
There were no other changes.
Okay. Of course, we went over this at a couple of different workshops now. Council questions for the finance director / assistant city manager?
Oh, thanks for bringing all that to our attention and getting those corrections made.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for the update.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, back to council. Final comments or questions? Okay, on resolution 23-26, establishing and adopting water, wastewater, reclaimed, and other miscellaneous utility fees, call the roll.
Councilman Bastian,
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 3-0. Okay, that brings us to public participation non-agended. Tracy, do I have any? Okay. And that would be Penny Arthur.
Sorry, I'm scared. This is my first time here.
Oh, you're,
Glad to have you.
yeah, welcome.
So, during Hurricane Ian, I was told, I don't know if it's a rumor or real, but that some dams broke. And that's why we had extensive amount of flooding. And I was just curious if those dams were fixed.
Okay.
And that's my
We don't have
question.
any dams in Port Orange.
No dams?
We don't have any dams in Port
So
Orange.
when
We have
someone
we're-
told me that, they were lying then.
Yeah, no,
Alright.
Well,
but if you'll,
tell you what, during council
Right.
comments, I'm gonna request the city manager give us an update on what I think you're referring to.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
Sound good?
thanks,
Thank
Penny.
you.
All right.
very much.
And that's the only one we had. That brings us to council comments. Drews, let's start with you.
We got a pretty lengthy agenda, so I don't really have anything, and we can let Wayne discuss what,
Want to do that right now?
well, after you and Scott go, but yeah, I don't have anything
I'll
in
tell you
particular
what,
for
since
tonight.
it's the hot item, I'll say it's your request. Wayne, if you could, I believe we're referencing the Cambridge Basin pump station. Tell us what the latest and the greatest on that is, what happened at Nicole and what we've done since then and what we're doing moving forward, because quite frankly, I know that's her question, but I know it's on a lot of people's minds, so.
Yeah, the impact to the Cambridge facility occurred during Hurricane Nicole, and Hurricane Ian, the flooding occurred basically due to high tides and excessive large amounts of rain. The facility itself didn't experience any damage during that one. In Hurricane Nicole, water overtopped, and Cambridge is a pond that has a pump that pumps water out, and there's a wall at the edge of the pond where water comes out of the pump and pushes back out into Rose Bay, and the wall collapsed during Hurricane Nicole. There has a temporary repair has been in place and has been in place since a couple of months after the storm, and we're working on a permanent replacement, which is more than just putting it back the way it is. In fact, we're going to Tallahassee this month to work with the legislators on some appropriations to fund. The reason we're doing this is because putting it back, we understand now, it did really well for 10 years. It served us well in many cases, but at the higher tides, the current solution doesn't help us. We cannot run the pumps during the high tides because the tide pushes against the pumps. So we're going to go try to, the request is to not to just build back what was there, but to build back something that's bigger and stronger, and that we can function and use our pumps during high tides as well. So the temporary repair is in place now. We had pretty heavy rains back at the end of, I think it was the end of September, and we were able to run the pump that we have in there in that system, and we were able to use it to function during storm systems right now. So the replacement that's in place works while we're in the process of getting more funding to build a much stronger solution in the long run. And our city engineer, Juno Reed, is here in the back, and anybody wants to talk about it in really, really long depth and detail, he'd be happy to talk to you about that.
He'll hang out all night.
Well, I appreciate your transparency.
Okay,
bet.
thank you.
Absolutely. Drew, thank you very much for asking that question.
You're welcome.
You got anything else tonight?
No, sir.
Scott, what you got tonight?
Just one item of interest for our city that I want to pay respect to and mention. The Parks and Rec Department in the city of Port Orange lost an icon recently. Veronica, known as Ronnie Roberts, passed away on November the 11th of this year. Ronnie was a 21-year employee before her retirement in 2007, but continued to serve the department in the city up until a few years ago as Mrs. Claus in the annual Christmas parade and the tree lighting ceremony. So most of you would recognize her from that. Ronnie would also drop by desserts for the crews, even just prepare some dinners for all the staff during some of our large events like the 4th of July. Ronnie is survived by her husband of 55 years, Wayne, and 2 adult sons, Roger and Bo, and 3 grandchildren. She will be missed by all who knew her. Donations in Ronnie's name can be made to Halifax Hospice. The family is planning a celebration of life sometime in the new year, and those announcements will be forthcoming.
Appreciate that.
Great way to serve a community.
I had to substitute as Santa Claus one year, and I had her escort me at the tree lighting ceremony, and that was just the best way to arrive and have her escort, and to see her with Santa Claus all those years, she so filled the role, and she so loved it, and you can't love that role without loving children and without loving a community. And you know, we want her to rest well. That in mind, and Christmas coming, this is actually the last meeting we will have of the month. Thanksgiving is coming up. We're not going to meet again until after these events happen. So Wayne, I would request that the Parks and Rec Director, Susan Lavallo, come up and update us on that first weekend of December and tell us what we have planned for Christmas.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Susan Lavallo, Parks and Recreation Director. So we have a lot going on over the holidays, especially with the new rec on board. There's a lot of activities going on in there. But the 2 big ones are our tree lighting ceremony, which will be held on December 2nd from 5:30 to 8. We have the Navy Band that will perform this year, as well as our community choir. Of course, Santa Claus will be there to make his big debut. So they'll have hay rides under the lights around the circle, and it's a great way to kick off the holiday season. In addition to that, the very next day is December 3rd, which is our 45th annual holiday parade. This year's theme is a very Florida Christmas. So we encourage you to get signed up and get your floats ready and come on out and enjoy that. That will run on Dunlawton Avenue at 2 o'clock and starts at Nova Road and heads east towards Spruce Creek Road. So it's a great time. It's a great way to kick off the holidays, and staff's very excited, and we're all geared up and ready to go.
Looking for it to be bigger than it's ever been before. And with that in mind, I also want to thank, we heard last meeting from Spouses Backing the Blue and their efforts to get ready for Cops for Christmas, and their efforts to help all our children have a good Christmas. Next Wednesday night is the fundraising night. We'll be sharing this on social media at Red Robin. So nobody wants to cook the day before Thanksgiving, so it's a good day to visit Red Robin and let them know why you're there, to support Spouses Backing the Blue. And then, of course, we'll also be sharing the information about the toy drive that Spouses Backing the Blue are doing for Cops for Christmas, accepting donations beginning today through December 21st, 8 to 5. Drop-off location, I recognize that address as our Port Orange Police Station, 4545 Clyde Morris Boulevard, but you can get more information at spousesbackingtheblue.org, or you can visit all our social media pages, because we'll be sharing that and have already started to share that. And then I think that's most of my, there's one. Wayne, the street lights on Nova Road between Herbert Street and Dunlawton that are still out, that have been out since Hurricane Ian. Can you get us an update from the state DOT on when they plan on fixing that, or have you heard from them already?
I have not heard, other than they were still looking for a power source where the issue is originating from, and they have not found it, but I'll see if I can get more update for you.
Okay, you can borrow my baseball bat if you need it. Not that I have a strong opinion, but with that, special reports, overview of, over the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission derelict boat removal program, item 14.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city manager, city attorney, department heads, and guests. Manny Marino, Chief of Police, and I'm here to give you a brief update on our derelict vessels. Believe it or not, in 2 years, this is my first presentation to you all, other than a couple comments, so I've been lucky.
We'll see if we can string several of these together for you.
There you go. So, unfortunately, I have to apologize. I was hoping to have a representative from Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission here to answer any questions that you may have that I cannot answer. Unfortunately, they have our Volusia area representatives are currently deployed to the southern border in Texas. So any questions I can't answer, my staff and I will be glad to get those for you when they return, which looks like some point next week. So very quickly, for those that are new to, new to derelict vessels, this is a map of Port Orange's jurisdiction with regards to the Halifax. As you can see, it pretty much runs consistently with our city limits. The northern boundary is our northern city limit, which is just north of Riverwalk Park, runs completely across the Halifax to the Barrier Island, and then Seminole Avenue to the south, and again out into the Halifax with the exclusion of Wilbur Bay, which is attached to Wilbur by the Sea. So a very large area. With regards to derelict vessels, there are two types of vessels we talk about. One is derelict vessels, the other is at-risk vessels, again for our home viewers. A derelict vessel is one that's substantially wrecked or junked, either partially or fully submerged, also missing some major components such as steering, propulsion, and then again some type of hull breach that's causing the vessel to become submerged. A large part of what FWC has been focusing on recently is at-risk vessels. The reason being is that these are vessels that have not fallen to the part that they're considered derelict and do have an opportunity to come back into compliance once the owners are cited. And that's obviously what FWC tries to do, is to get the owners to repair these vessels to a point where they do not have to be towed, or you have to bring in extra heavy equipment to get these vessels out of the area. As we were leading to this presentation and discussions with FWC towards the end of October, as you see, they were conducting a at-risk vessel operation for all of coastal Volusia County. I did not see what the end result of that operation was, but we do have an upcoming quarterly meeting, so I'm hoping to have some updated numbers for you.
Thank you.
Also for the public, there's something that's also known as a public nuisance vessel. Basically, this is a at-risk vessel that has been cited 3 times within an 18-month period for the same condition, and that the owner fails to bring the vessel up to a point that is satisfactory and not making it at risk any longer. What this does is it allows FWC to then treat it like a derelict vessel and remove it, which keeps the cost down because these vessels are generally still floating. There may be a need to pump out some water, but it doesn't require the equipment that a derelict does. This is something that's fairly new to FWC and the vessel turn-in program. Again, this deals with at-risk vessels. This is geared towards vessel owners whose vessels are at risk and maybe do not have the financial means or even want to bring their vessel up into compliance. They can apply for this grant through FWC. It eliminates the cost to the vessel owner, and it also avoids any type of criminal liability on the part of the vessel owner. And the boat will then be removed and ultimately destroyed free of charge to the vessel owner. So we encourage anyone who's in that situation to look into this program. There's more information on the FWC website. Part of the problems or part of the things that make derelict vessels so expensive is some of the requirements. Many years ago, you needed to pull a permit for every vessel that you were going to remove from the water. That was generally done either through Department of Environmental Protection or through Army Corps of Engineers or another governing body. However, there is now an exemption in state rule that allows state law enforcement and municipal law enforcement agencies to not have to it's a permit exemption that doesn't require you to pull a permit, as long as you follow certain rules that are stipulated by FWC. As you can see, those are FWC's best management practices, that there will be no harm to the environment, and also that the vessel case is entered into FWC's statewide derelict vessel database, which covers all of the state of Florida. You do see in there, though, that if you see a project that you potentially could cause some type of environmental harm, they suggest that you do go ahead and apply for the permit, because if you remove the vessel and ultimately cause some type of harm, you could be liable to some sort of fine or penalty. So when you look at the best management practices that FWC has on their website, it's really geared towards contractors. The majority of these BMP requirements are to really avoid or minimize any type of impact to the marine environment. And when we say that, we mean any type of live bottom or reef, seagrass beds, oyster beds, or mangroves. The same holds true with marine life. You want to try to avoid any kind of impact to, say, manatees, sea turtles, or other types of protected species that may be in a given area. So when you see that, they list things such as not dragging vessels either on or offshore to avoid disrupting that marine environment. When they look at, yes,
I'm sorry, I just want to interrupt you. Can you go back to that one slide for just a quick second, if you don't mind me interjecting a question for you here?
I do not have a keyboard. Let's see if we can.
That's all right. That's okay.
There you go.
So, with regard to this requirement, if you will, about, and maybe Matt can weigh in on this too, about not damaging the mangroves, for example. One of the things we see time and time again is a derelict vessel that is in proximity to mangroves that we know when the correct moon phase, tide, and winds, it's going to end up in the mangroves. Happens time and time again. In fact, on the north side of our facility, there is a blue sailboat from more than a decade ago that now sits completely encased in mangroves, to where if you can't hover above it with a drone or something, you wouldn't know it's there. Okay. So that vessel started off as an anchored and moored vessel about 70 feet from the shoreline. So with that in mind, my point, that question is there not something, Matt, maybe this is better for you to answer, is that because we have seen this and we know the propensity for this to occur and that it is going to occur, can you not take into account the fact that that damage to our ecosystem is likely unless it is removed, even if a small amount of, like one oyster bar or something like that, may be an issue, because what we see is that the damage becomes greater, and it's inevitable. It happens time and time and time again.
Correct. Matt, if you good.
I'd have to look, so, there's a very strict process that we have to follow. It's related to just the due process guarantees that are there for the potential owners. I will look to see if there's some sort of exigent exception, because sometimes there are those.
And that's probably a
things
great way to
built
put
in.
it, actually. Yeah.
So we can look into that. I wouldn't know off the top of my head if that exists, but I do understand your concern.
Yeah, because to that note, I mean, every single one that we have down there now, they were all predictable before they've ended up in the positions they're in now, flipped upside down on mangroves, flipped up into the oyster bars.
Correct.
Every single one of those has been predictable.
Yes.
And we just waited for the next storm, not necessarily us, but the state and all the communities. You just know the right turn, the king tide, the right wind, the next storm, whatever it is, the inevitable is going to happen, and it just happens every single time.
So right now, with regard to that, the only cases that I know of where they will move a vessel for safety reasons is if it's in if it's in the waterway. If it's in the channel causing a navigation hazard, Coast Guard does have the ability to move some of those out, but I don't think they have that same caveat with a derelict vessel or a potential derelict vessel.
But to your point, Chief, earlier is that, with the increased focus on at risk, that kind of a focus before this one blue, example here, that would kind of be a vehicle of, avoiding that becoming the full-blown derelict vessel. When you see those at-risk factors, he flashed them up there. There's a bunch of them, but it gives us a little bit more to go on than, the junked or wrecked. It can't, those are tough to prove in some instances until it's too late. And that's kind of what you're getting at. So I think the focus on some of those at-risk factors and the increased enforcement should improve some of that.
So I was going to bring this up at the end, but there is some talk out there about different legislation being potentially being proposed. They're even looking at harsher penalties. This could be something that we, add in. I've already told FWC if there's anything that's looking like it needs to be pushed, either through Florida Police Chiefs Association, through our legislative committee, that we can add these types of suggestions in that we'd like to see if they are going to, in fact, look at it. I know, as a matter of fact, there's another one that talks about harsher penalties, because right now it really is a misdemeanor. But I can't imagine that it's not something that would garner support throughout the state, because when you look at the interactive map for derelict vessels, it goes down the east coast to Key West, and it goes right back up through the west coast, and even some of the inland St. Johns River and some of the navigable waterways. So definitely something we can suggest if we start getting into those conversations.
Okay.
Back to the best management practices. So FWC requires some specific types of equipment for the various types of vessels. And as you can see, you look at vessels that are either floating at high tide and barely aground, what they call hard aground, which is a vessel that potentially is up on a sandbar and completely out of the water. And then again, vessels that are sunken or partially submerged in shallow water. Some of the equipment that they specifically mention in the best management practices, as you see: shallow draft deck barge, barge-mounted cranes, turbidity barriers, which is to help combat any type of fuel or oil leaks. And once they've contained that leak, then they have to use something to absorb all those contaminants, which then need to go in a contaminant container. Flotation devices to bring vessels back up to the surface, and then pumps and other equipment to further remove any other water or any type of fuselage or something else that needs to come out before they can move the vessel. As some of you may have seen, recently over the summer, you saw a big project right here in Port Orange, south of Dunlawton Bridge. Involved a ginormous barge with a 300-ton crane, a pair of 30-ton concrete ballast blocks, and then subsequently that entire barge was then anchored to the riverbed. That project in and of itself was funded by FWC through their derelict removal program at a cost of $93,000 to remove 5 vessels. So you see what the cost is for some of these. Some of you may also remember back in 2022, Daytona went ahead and authorized $100,000 to remove 12 vessels. And prior to that, there was, I think there was another, even before this, there was about 34 vessels that Daytona had removed from their waters. Interestingly enough, in speaking with FWC, there is an avenue if municipalities wish to pay directly to have the derelict vessel removed. You can do that and then put in for reimbursement through FWC in the form of a grant. Their only stipulation is, though, that FWC has to handle the investigation, because I'm sure they want to make sure that all the steps are followed and due process is given to the boat owner. Just to give you an idea, these costs are directly from one of the local vendor contracts that's in place, and you can see why some of these projects cost so much money. On the left, you have a fiberglass hull vessel, which is your basic, because those costs go up incrementally if you're dealing with steel hull or metal boats. But these are the costs per linear foot to remove the vessel itself. The cost on the right is vessel demolition and disposal. That is, once the vessel's out of the water, if the vendor needs to then destroy the vessel and dispose of it, those are the additional cost, again, per linear foot. So as an example, this boat is currently pending removal. It's already gone through the process, and now it's just waiting to be removed through whatever contractor or vendor that FWC selects. As you can see, there's FWC's case number. This is a 1977 32-foot pacemaker yacht, fiberglass hull. So just as an example, and this is without any special equipment or any type of contamination considerations, just to remove this vessel at $200 per linear foot is $6,400, and then to dispose of it, an additional $7,200, bringing the total at $13,600 without any other considerations with this vessel. This vessel, as you know, for those of home that don't, this is south of Dunlawton Bridge, just east of Seabird Island. This vessel actually is a 2022 case that was working its way through the system. However, FWC made a policy change in one of their dates requirements where it was a 5-day waiting period. They then switched it to a 21-day waiting period while it was working through the process, and that caused a lot of these cases where the boats hadn't been removed yet to go back through the process. So that's why this boat's been sitting there for so long.
Chief, if I can just comment on that one. So that vessel is a vessel that started up being moored up in Daytona and was subsequently moved and then ended up being moored next to our launch facility in violation of state statute. When it was first noticed that it was there, it was floatable and not in that condition. It was just in violation of a mooring and anchoring statute that says you can't anchor and moor within 150 feet of a boat launch facility. And it stayed like that for weeks before it ended up in this fiasco that we're in now.
The tide always seems to work against us for some reason.
Again, it's all been predictable stuff. So we
Tide
know
and
it's gonna
time.
happen.
Did the owner
Yes.
just abandon it when it was moored and floatable?
Well, part of that process with the derelict vessel, though, is the owner is cited, criminally cited at the onset, and then once this process has fully run its course and the vessel's removed, then the onus is on the owner to reimburse the state for the cost of the removal. And they will put holds on the titles, and you will be unable to renew your motor vehicle tags until you satisfy the cost of removing the vessel. So there is a penalty to it once you can establish who the owner is or the person responsible for leaving that derelict vessel in that condition. From FWC, this is just some numbers from Volusia County. There was a total of 59 derelict vessels. Of those, all but 9 have been removed. The other 9 are set for removal, so the next go-around, hopefully they will all be pulled out of the waters. And there are an additional 13 ongoing investigations to this point. For Port Orange, as you can see, from that derelict vessel database, we have 5 vessels. 2 have already been removed. One was on the north side of the bridge near the boat ramps. The other one was on the south side of the bridge on the eastern side of the Halifax near Deck Down Under. The one derelict vessel that's pending removal is the one I just mentioned and showed you in the previous slide near Seabird Island. 2 vessels that are currently under investigation. The one that we do get a lot of comments on is the houseboat, again, near Seabird Island. That one just completed the 21-day notice, so that is getting ready to have the approval, the letter, removal letter approved. Once that's completed, they'll start the bidding process, and that'll hopefully get on to the next round of removals. Speaking about removals, though, there was questions, and even when I first arrived here, the county was generally only pulling vessels about once a year. They were getting these big projects together, saving all these locations, getting everyone through the process, and then subsequently doing the removals about once. The last 3, because there has been funding from the state, have actually been paid for and put together by FWC. So you still have the county doing the once-a-year ones, working in conjunction with FWC, who's now doing them as they come up, and the funding's available. And this was just a comparison to see what our surrounding neighbors are also dealing with. As you can see, New Smyrna Beach has 11, Edgewater 9, Daytona Beach also 9, in addition to what they've already pulled, and R5. I only included our surrounding neighbors. There are some down at Oak Hill. Holly Hill pulled, I believe, 4. Ormond Beach had a few, and then there are some that are inland, farther inland, closer to DeLand, and some of in lakes and other bodies of waters, and of course the St. John. So with that, if you have any additional questions.
I think the biggest concern I have is not just, okay, the eyesore is a problem, but the environmental impact of leaving it there and the bureaucracy we have to go through to get to the point where we can do something about it is just incredible. I don't know. I appreciate the update.
Yeah, I think this has been an issue that has grown immensely, I would say, in the last 5 years. Derelict vessels have always been a problem from time to time, but across the state of Florida now, I know the chief comes from South Florida and he can attest. I mean, there are what looks like floating junk villages of people trying to live on these massive amounts of these derelict vessels, and that's how a lot of this starts. Is they buy some derelict vessel that is not operational, but it will float for now. They buy them sometimes for $300-400, and they live on them for a long time, but they can't maintain them. And then it's just the amount of it's the tide, it's the wind, it's the storms, it's whatever. And now you've got something that's floating, that's tearing up private property, public property. We've seen damage from our own docks and facilities along the causeway. We've seen stuff along Halifax, and then the cost to try to go back and then fix something
leaking
that was,
old fuel.
Yeah,
leaking.
Right, and fix
all
something that was
sorts
so
of
predictable
contaminants.
to see. And every single one of these, like, I've actually had the city manager out to show him, and we've looked at vessels to predict that this will happen. And then, of course, you come through Storm Street, and what you thought would happen has happened. And it's so frustrating that there's not a more expeditious process to take care of something you know is going to happen. There is a state statute, Chief. I guess I'm directing to the city manager. I would just ask that, there's a state statute that does give us some early efforts to identify these vessels that are being anchored up and moored while they're still in movable condition, and cite them for being within 150 feet of our launch facility. And our launch facility, as I see it, is almost the entire causeway because there are launch things on each end and parking and all that stuff. And so I'd like to see us get an updated map from GIS that shows our boundaries and where that 150 is, that if we don't already have it, it should be something made available to not only our city, but our county partners and our state partners to let them know, hey, these are the boundaries of our facilities. Here's the 150-foot mark that would give us that access or that ability to enforce that state statute, and at least do the best we can. I know we're in a little bit of a difficult situation because our police department doesn't have waterway capabilities, but we do have mutual aid, and there are a lot of partners that I'm sure we can reach out to whenever we need to if they're not already doing those things. But that would just be my recommendation and ask, is that everything we can do to try to prevent us to getting into more and more and more of these derelict vessel issues, just because they become so time consuming, and they just, like the one you're talking about, the houseboat thing. I mean, that one now is, that one's actually washed up hard aground on a federally protected bird sanctuary. Right. And again, it was so predictable. When it was first there, it was floating. It could have been moved. It could have been relocated, and it needed to be. And I know it's tricky because we're dealing with private property, and I get all that. I'm sure the city manager or the city attorney is probably thinking, watch what you ask for. But they're just it's just frustrating. And then we end up finding ourselves in positions where we can't react because of the cost and the
combination
equipment.
of the bureaucratic process and finite resources.
So it's so frustrating, but anything we can do to work with all of the partners that are involved in this, the county, the state. Chief, has there been any discussion on Volusia County has a coastal division, and one of the things I was always curious about is, when you looked at those equipment requirements, if you will, of things like that, has there been any discussion with the county coastal division for them buying a barge or some apparatuses that would allow them some limited, because most of these vessels are usually 30 feet or less, to where they could look at something, identify it, act quickly, and go, okay, well, we're gonna get to that one now before the next storm and get that piece of junk hauled ashore and off to the landfill and be able to react a little bit faster on their own dime.
I'm not aware of any of those discussions. I will say, though, that you are correct. I think somewhere along the lines, because we don't have a marine function, we weren't participating in the derelict vessel meetings. I had been to one at the Coast Guard Station, Ponce Inlet, a while back, and didn't realize they were still conducting those. So now that I've been speaking with FWC again, we're going to be back in that rotation. So that's something I can see if that's been talked about. If not, bring it up for discussion, both there and at Volusia Flagler Chiefs, to see if there's been any other discussions with other cities as far as that goes.
And the sailboat that I mentioned earlier that's up in the mangroves, I know that's probably not on the list, but is the thought there that it's just so encased in the mangroves that you just leave it forever now? Or is that one that we should be looking to remove?
I think it's one of those environmental impacts that we talked about, right? So if it's going to cause more harm, be more detrimental to that marine environment, that they could come to a decision that, okay, then that's going to now become.
Can't see it anymore now.
Correct, and it's not
and you just leave it
causing
there.
a contamination issue. It's got fuel that's spilling into, say, sea turtle nests.
Got it.
It may be best to just let that one lie, is what we're gathering. So
Okay.
the least impact to the environment, which is why I think they use the heavier equipment, because you're able to do more. They even talked about, and I didn't put it in the presentation, you know, they use divers that also go down. I was Councilman Grubbs very well knows. So there's definitely a lot that goes into these projects, and that's why the cost is so astronomical. I did want to say, I'm glad you mentioned, from that list, though, it's not everyone that's just, you know, walked away from their derelict vessels. There were a number on the list that were cited as hurricane damaged vehicles. So it just wasn't everyone just dumping their vessels here in the area.
Very good.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Item 15, Environmental Advisory Board report. It's a Christine Cunningham sighting.
Speaking of damaging the environment,
Speaking of damaging.
right on cue.
That's right. And here I am to save the day. Reading Council, Mr. Clark, how are you?
What can you do to help us remove derelict vessels, Christine?
Well, if it was up to me, as soon as I see it, I would move it, but, you know, I used to do those things as a private citizen, but that was back in the day. So we've been very busy on the Environmental Advisory Board. We received our grant for the water goat. If you don't know what a water goat is, it's a trash barrier that we put across either a lake, a canal, a pond or a stream. In our case, it's going to be the canal over at Riverwalk. And want to thank, it's from Surfing's Evolution and Preservation Foundation is who provided us the grant. It was for $4,500. And special recognition to Kelly McGee of the Riverside Conservation, who is the one who directed me towards the people that were very generous in their grant to us. So that all comes with some responsibilities of cleaning it, obviously, putting up a sign, which is going to be paid for by Volusia County Soil and Water Commission District. So we've got that funding, and just get it out there, and we're going to tie that in with the Riverwalk Garden. And so in the spring, we'll have a large event showcasing what we have done over there on that side of the park. So that was great news for that meeting. Family Days, what a great weekend that was. I mean, not only just perfect weather for everybody, and it was very busy for just so many people enjoying the public. So last year, we gave away 80 trees, and this year we've got 180 people signed up for their trees. So that was
Awesome.
more than any of us could have expected. So working with Margaret and getting the trees together and putting them out in our spring event. So we had a lot of feedback from the spring event, and that people gave us reports and updates on their trees that they planted from that event. So it was really exciting to have people just stop by and talk to us. And we were with Parks and Recreation this year, so that is a very busy corner. Very much appreciated that they took us on. Tree City USA, which everybody knows we are, we're putting signs up. We're gonna work with Steve Forrester, and we're gonna put 6 signs up, letting everybody know that come into the city that we are a tree city. We used to have them, some storms took them out, and now we're finally going to put them back. So just about every entrance into Port Orange will have a tree city designation, and that is,
Take care of what we have.
uh-huh. And the garden, the Riverwalk Garden, so we've got our plants basically picked out. We're also going to use the local nurseries. They are all local native plants, and we're very excited to create this garden down at Riverwalk, and that will be done in the spring. And with the help of Parks and Recreation, we're getting this done. So we have a lot on projects going on to make the city more beautiful, more functional, and to try and keep everything focused on our designation of Tree City.
Excellent.
I think we just also had a community garden project either worked on or completed over by the new rec facility too recently.
I haven't been involved in that,
Yeah.
so I don't know anything about that, but I'm sure it's been a project ongoing. We've had rain, so yay.
Yeah, for sure.
Any questions?
Thank you.
No, thank
Appreciate
you.
Good to see you,
Appreciate you.
Christine.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, you too.
That brings us to the public hearing portion of our meeting. The public hearing portion of the meeting is now open. Item 16 is first reading of ordinance number 2023-11. Ordinance number 2023-11 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Article 6, Section 2-240 related to payments for utilities to revise the late payment penalty, establish a delinquent fee, and expand the authority of the city manager to make utility billing adjustments, establishing a new Section 2-242 authorizing delinquent account payment plans, providing for codification, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for scrivener's errors, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2023-11.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, a proper second. The item is open on the floor for discussion. Mr. City Manager, Wayne, who do you have to present for this one?
John McKinney's available to go over a brief summary of the changes and answer any questions council may have.
John, tell us what we're talking about here.
Mayor, council, as always, I think you do a great job when you just read the ordinance. So one of the first things that we're looking at is on the adjustments. Well, first off, everything is based off of the Rafatillis rate study. They went in and not only did they look at our rates, but they actually looked at our ordinances to make sure that they are within norm. The first thing that was noticed was our late fee. So if someone pays their bill 30 days late, then they're assessed a late fee. The late fee is currently $10. The recommendation is to take it to 3% or $10, whichever is greater. We don't balance the water sewer budget based on late fees, so currently if you have a $100 bill, you pay the $10. By going to 10% or 3%, whichever is greater, someone that has a $333 bill would not see, the fee, it would be at $333, the late fee would be $10. So, a normal, residential user of a $100 utility bill would only see a $3 late fee. So it'd actually be a reduction in the fees. The next item that we continue run up against is we currently, when we go to shut your water meter off, people tend to like to park over top of the meter boxes. So we go out there repeatedly to try and disconnect the meter. So we're changing the term disconnect to delinquent. So whether we are able to shut it off or not, you're paying that delinquent fee. The next item is clarification on tenant accounts, who's responsible. So we worked on clearing that language up. The other item is the city manager or designee currently has 3 items by which they can make an adjustment to someone's utility account. A billing error, a transposition of numbers, the customer pays the prior month's utility bill resulting in a late fee. So the first thing we're looking to do, just because of how much bills are, is looking to raise the city manager or designee's limits from $50 to $100, which is very reasonable. And we're actually creating a 4th reason is for the ability to waive a customer's penalty or delinquent fee once in a 12-month rolling period, assuming they haven't had a waiver. You know, I look at this as maybe a little bit of compassion. You know, someone has to go unexpectedly, you know, across the country, another country example. We're unable to pay their utility bill, never been late once in 20 years. The entire time they've had here, I currently have no means by which to do a courtesy waiver of a late fee, no different than if you're late on your mortgage, your cellular bill, et cetera. So this is a fourth item. And then the other item is payment plans, just kind of putting into place the fact that we do have payment plans, but we didn't really have it designated in our fee resolution or our ordinance, but we have done, had a desk procedure to do it. So it puts it in place, and I'll be back in a month or so with an actual resolution detailing the payment plan.
Okay. Questions from Mr. McKinney? There being none at the moment, would anyone here care to speak to the item? I see none. Back to us, council. Comments or questions? There being none, on ordinance number 2023-11, call the roll.
Councilman Bastian?
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes, 3-0. That brings us to item 17. Item 17 is first reading of ordinance number 2023-16, the Land Development Code Amendment to Chapter 21, update to the city impact fees. Here we go. Ordinance number 2023-16 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending and consolidating certain provisions of Chapter 21 of the city's Land Development Code related to impact fees imposed by the city other than water and sewer development fees, providing for uniformity and consistency of impact fee administration and procedures, providing for reorganization, revisions, additions, and deletions to effectuate consolidation of the impact fee code provisions, adopting updated schedules of fire rescue impact fees, transportation impact fees, and Parks and Rec impact fees, providing for the imposition of police impact fees, adopting a schedule of police impact fees, and classifying use of property subject to such impact fees, providing for definitions, rules of construction and findings, providing for providing for the use of impact fees monies collected, providing for exemptions in connection with the impact fees, providing for the calculation of alternate impact fees, providing for changes of size and use, providing for payment and collection of impact fees, providing for impact fee credits, requiring periodic review of impact fee studies in this ordinance, declaration of exclusion from the Administrative Procedures Act, providing for notice of the updated schedules of fire rescue impact fees, transportation impact fees, and Parks and Rec impact fees for the imposition of police impact fees, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date.
Mayor, I missed part of that. Could you read that again?
How did I know you would be the one?
Move to approve ordinance number 2023-16.
I'll second.
We have a motion, proper second. The item is open on the floor for discussion. Wayne, who do we have discussing this? Tell me, as the person who wrote this.
Tim Berman, Community Development, and not sure I can add more to what you just summarized on that item, but I'll go ahead and add a couple more points there. Basically, the impact fees we're looking to adjust there are the transportation, fire, and Parks and Recreation, and add a police. Basically, we did contact through Raftillus to do the studies. They prepared the studies on these. We had a workshop back in the spring where we presented the information as to what the changes would be in terms of those impact fees and creating the police there. The RAFTA study served as data analysis for this ordinance, which adjusts the fire impact fee, adjusts the transportation impact fee, Parks and Rec impact fee, and creates the fire. Just for kind of point of reference, the fire, transportation, Parks and Recreation impact fees we currently have at the city were last established in 2005, 2006. So basically a lot of the increases that we are seeing are basically just due to the cost of having to do improvements that have basically gone on the past 15, 16 years. The city impact fee charges are basically only assessed on new development, and that's to help pay for the public infrastructure to accommodate that new residential or non-residential development. The impact fees are based off a land use category, and there's a cost that a unit of that land use category is applied to. So for instance, we've got single family, multifamily, commercial, office, residential listed on there, and the units that can be done are basically, single family rooms, bed, dwelling, or parking space. They picked that unit to basically best represent what that use is and how it could basically impact that service. Just for a couple of items here on our updates, They will be phased in over 2 or 4 year period to comply with state law. The adjustments are no more than 50% of the current rates for any of our impact fees. For the fire and rescue impact fee, we basically did add new land use categories, and this is to account for the range of impacts that those services can have. For example, an assisted living facility is currently based off the square footage of the facility. Now will be based off the number of beds to accurately account for the impact that it causes on our fire services when the new facilities come in. Parks and Rec was just basically increasing the fees. There was no change to the categories. Transportation, we added categories that were not existing, such as health exercise club, the medical marijuana dispensary. We also took away some categories that were not used, such as an airport hangar. And we also basically increased the fees there to account for basically make sure the costs were equivalent to what those improvements would be then. And then the third was the police. This established the land use categories along with the with the fee for that new category that will be going forward with then. And the ordinance last, as indicated, establishes the impact fee schedule for all the land use categories. We did review this with the Port Orange South Dakota Chamber. We also basically did speak with the Volusia Building Industry Association on this, and also VCARD on the proposed changes. And I believe representatives from VCARD are here, along with the chamber. On that then, they appreciated, from the input we got, they appreciate us letting them see that then, and basically further discuss those improvements moving forward then. Second reading item will be December 5th. We also will be basically making the impact fees effective on April 1st, 2024. That is not April Fool's joke. That will be the actual date then. And also, too, we are preparing a website to go, if approved tonight, to be launched onto our website, which will outline what these costs will be. Also, too, letting them know the effective date there. So basically, the public will have notice there prior to these going into effect then. So we'll be preparing that then. Staff is recommending approval. I'm here for any questions you might have.
Well, you certainly know how I feel about fees, and I have been a proponent for 7 years as mayor that every single one of our fees needs to be reviewed a maximum of once every 5 years, so that we are tweaking our fees and not doing an overreach, you know, and this is certainly part of that. And we all know that we can't stop growth. We all know that a lot of it is going to continue as long as it follows the law and follows. So most of what happens never comes before us, but it does need to be able to fund itself.
Yeah.
Growth does need, you know, whether it's fair share agreements or whether it's impact fees, it needs to be able to pay its part of the impact on the community when it arrives. And this is a large part of that. And I will continue to advocate that all our fees get reviewed regularly. I think that's a policy that should, and I see that we've been codifying it slowly as we've been reviewing all our fees, that future councils maintain that policy, because the last thing we need to do, and I've seen the impact of it before, is when people try to hold the cost too close and we end up paying for it with something that we have to do something radically too radical with later. The other thing with this is with impact fees. A couple years ago, the state put an update in place, and I kind of feel sorry for communities that have not seen growth, so didn't update their impact fees because they didn't need to. The state limits how much we can change those fees. You know, you have a lot of communities over the state of Florida that all of a sudden now they're seeing growth that they haven't seen in 20 years. They never really needed to update their impact fees, and they're only able to increase them so much. And some of those numbers will never, ever, ever pay for themselves. I think that we have a pretty good shot at doing it right here. I don't want to overburden anybody, but I tell you what, if you're going to join our community, love to have you, but you got to pay your fair share. Drew, what do you got?
Like you hate doing this and passing these things on, but we were behind the times, and this is going to give us a chance to, it's never going to fully pay for it, but it's going to get us, you know, closer to breaking even, hopefully.
Well, between impact fees and the tax impact of
the new stuff, you know, it's much needed.
Particularly our
Sure.
businesses as they come online.
Yeah.
There's businesses that service our community.
Yep.
Scott?
No, good.
Okay. Would anyone here care to speak to the item? Good job, Tim. No, it wasn't just the presentation, it was blocking the person who I was looking at when I said, would anyone care to speak to the item? Yeah, good job, my friend. With that, back to council. Any comments or questions, concerns? On item 17, ordinance 2023-16, call the roll.
Councilman Bastian,
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 3-0. Came to me awful fast when there's only 3 of us here. That brings us to item 18. Item 18 is ordinance number 2023-17, the Second Amendment of the restated First Amendment of the Master Development Agreement for the Nova Planned Depot Commercial Development. Ordinance number 2023-17 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, approving the Second Amendment to restated First Amendment to the Master Development Agreement of Nova Depot Planned Commercial Development, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability of, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2023-17.
I'll second.
The item has a proper motion and second. It's open on the floor for discussion. Wayne, who do we have?
Penelope Cruz, Planning. So before you is an amendment to add Motor Vehicle Service Center as an allowed use only on Lot 2A of the Nova Depot Planned Commercial Development. This property is accessed from Nova Road with an existing driveway and has existing cross-access connections to the other lots within the PCD. If the amendment is approved, the applicant is proposing to develop the site with a Take 5 oil change facility. They'd be required to submit a site plan and ensure it's into compliance with all the land development requirements as well as the requirements of the master development agreement before going under construction. So with that, I'm just here to answer any questions you may have.
Council, comments, questions? No. There being none, would anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, I do see a certain irony that it's going right next to the Waffle House. 2 different kinds of grease, I guess. No other comments? Call the roll.
Councilman Bastian,
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner.
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 3-0. That is first reading. That brings us to item 19, first reading of ordinance number 2023-18. Ordinance number 2023-18 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending the Land Development Code, Chapters 2, 3, 9, and 10, relating to the definitions, interpretations, clarifying development applications considered to be major developments, adjusting submittal timeframes, clarifying requirements for meetings and membership of Staff Development Review Committee, renaming change of grade permit to minor engineering permit, and clarifying what is included, removing outdated references to stormwater management permit and wetlands, alteration permit, and providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve 2023-18.
Second.
We have a motion, proper second. The item's open on the floor for discussion. First reading, Wayne, who do we have?
Penelope Cruz, Planning. So this is a housekeeping cleanup to our code to deal with a few different items related to the development review process. The first of which is just a cleanup to clarify that master development agreements that are part of properties that are zoned planned community are also considered major developments. Just a clarifying item there because it just wasn't listed. The second item is regarding resubmittal timeframes. Based on feedback from the development community as well as surveying other sister cities around us, staff is proposing to expand the resubmittal timeframe. A lot of times the initial 60 days that you get after DRC and then the 30 days thereafter for other resubmittals just isn't enough time, especially when you have documents or surveying or other field work you have to do that require third parties, and so it's just, you don't have enough time for that. So just expanding it to kind of be in compliance with, or consistent with what some of the other communities have and the times that we live in. So third item is regarding the Staff Development Review Committee. Just again, there's some house cleaning things to just really clarify in the code what qualifies as a quorum, membership, minute taking, et cetera, for the SDRC. The next item is regarding what is proposed to be called a minor engineering permit. I do want to state that the term minor is not anything. It's just to clarify the distinction between doing a full-blown engineering site plan. It's really to kind of just try to fill this gap that we have between building permits and full-blown site plans and subdivisions. We have historically had this change of grade permit that was used for these kind of in-between things. It's renaming it to clarify that it's, it can be used for more than just change of grade. Sometimes there's been situations where we've had property where it's highly vegetated, it's been taken over by homeless camps and things like that. Property owners want to go in, and it's a safety issue. They want to go in and kind of clear some of the underbrush, leave the trees there, but just provide some visibility. It's used for things like that. Sometimes you'll have a single-family lot that's not it's not something that you're platting or subdividing. It's just a remnant parcel. You see these larger kind of irregular shaped parcels along Herbert Street, some other older streets there. And sometimes there might be some grading issues. Sometimes you have to deal with some floodplain things that are beyond the scope of a normal, just everyday building permit, but also doesn't require a full-blown site plan. So just provides that kind of gap for things like that. And in the process of addressing that change of name there for the change of grade, staff came across 2 permits that have never been used. There's in over 20 years that we've been here and beyond, there was permits referenced called stormwater management permit and wetland alteration permits. Those types of functions have always been just done through the development review process under a site plan or subdivision. So that's clarified there, that's the process that you use, but also provides the avenue to be able to address these things at a more minor scale if needed with a minor engineering permit, if that situation arrives. Majority of the time, that'll be under a site plan or a subdivision. So with that, I'm here just to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Scott, any questions for staff?
Nope.
Drew?
No.
Okay. You might get off easy, we'll see. Does anyone here care to speak to the item? Anyone other than Robert? No, I'm kidding. Come on up, Robert. We couldn't go the entire meeting. You had to wait for the last item just to throw me off a little bit, huh?
Yes, sir.
Come on up.
Mayor, council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive, Port Orange. But I still find it terribly inappropriate that you can take the altered wetlands provisions permit and re-identify it as a minor engineering permit, because the destruction of wetlands is simply not minor. And I did find in the summary that the minor engineering permit and the consolidation of permits, it states that a minor engineering permit application requires the submittal of a survey, engineered design plans, and other construction details as appropriate based on the scope of work. And so what I'm proposing is that you take this wetlands alteration permit and re-identify it as a wetlands alteration engineered plan, and leave the rest of the wording the same, so that then you can take this engineered plan and submit it in support of a minor engineering permit or a construction site permit, either one. And then they can get the kind of engineering evaluation to say, does it really meet those things that are described for a minor engineering permit, as compared to those things that are described for a wetlands alteration permit, because the two descriptions are not compatible. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Who else? There being none, back to us. Council comments or questions on that or anything else? That being said, on ordinance number 2023-18, first reading, call the roll.
Councilman Bastian?
Yes.
Councilman Stiltner?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes, 3-0. The public hearing portion of the meeting is closed. That brings us to additional items. City Attorney report.
None tonight.
Excellent report. City Manager, do you have just as good a report?
Nothing further.
Excellent report. That brings us to council committee reports. First Step Shelter, that is me. We have, First Step Shelter has a structural capacity to hold almost 100 people. Currently, right now, they've been ramping up over the years. There's 60 to 65 people being housed, but the capacity of servicing them is closing in on the number of people that the shelter can actually encompass. So it's actually, I guess you could say, near capacity. It has additional capacity to take on more people at the shelter, at the First Step Shelter. So that is very good news, and that it's doing its job. Roundtable of elected officials met yesterday. There were a couple of items. One was the nope, wrong one. The big throw out of that was the discussion of the Live Local Act and some of the ramifications of it on potential planning problems, and us developers being able to use that in an adverse way. Carmen Rosamunda, the city manager of DeBerry, presented on that, and he actually presented some recommendations. They're up in Tallahassee, and they've had discussions with Senator Passidomo, whose bill it was. And frankly, there are a lot of components of the bill that are very good, including down payment assistance for hometown heroes and things like that. So it's not all bad. What we're trying to do is get some of the issues worked out with it so that developers can't come in and use it, let development agreements expire, and then throw up big housing projects where none were allowed before, just for the sake of making a dollar. Because quite frankly, some of the rents that are allowed that are supposed to be in our market, workforce housing, are still pretty high allowable under the plan. So I appreciate Mr. Rosamunda presenting that to us yesterday. The other thing, I reported on the Transportation Subcommittee, which I chair for the Elected Officials Roundtable, that we were unable to meet due to the hurricane declaration, even though it didn't affect us here. And then our rescheduled meeting, we did not achieve a quorum, so I reported to them that we'd like to meet again in January. So, and since our staff has to set that up, Wayne, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and set that up as soon as possible for mid-late January if we can, and get the word out now so that we can get it on people's calendars. I think if we tried to meet in December, that we'd just simply have too many conflicts. And the Transportation Subcommittee, it's too important for us to proceed with an impaired attendance. So if you could do that for me. Port Orange South Daytona Chamber of Commerce, we've got a lot of things going on, and because Barbara Ann Hegan is here, I'm going to ask her to come up and tell us what's going on so that I can take a drink of water.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and of course our great City Manager. Thank you for your support of our upcoming events. The graduation is tomorrow for leadership, and we have Coach Ritter, that is our keynote presenter, and you will also be saying a few remarks. You're limited to 3 minutes tomorrow, Mayor.
Good job, Barbara. Good job.
But
I've been warned.
We're excited to have this leadership class. They were outstanding, and we appreciate the support. The leaders that you sent from the city were amazing, and all of your presenters, from government to your police chief to your fire chief, were all outstanding presenters. So finally, we also have, to end our year on a positive note, on December 6th, we have our annual celebration and award banquet, and that's going to be held in Daytona Beach Shores Community Center. And we have your very fine Reed Foley also being our guest that evening, playing music for us, as well as a number of guests that we are opening a nomination process right now for our Business of the Year, and a new award named to bring more of our distinguished citizen to the table. So we are looking for nominations from the community for Distinguished Citizen of the Year as well as Business of the Year. So we should have those nominations very soon.
All right,
That's
very
it.
good. Thank you very
so
much, and I
much.
will see you in the morning. The final report is on Art House. Vice Mayor Reed Foley is not present to give that, so we look forward to that next month. With that, we do not meet again until December. So I want to wish everybody a terrific and happy Thanksgiving, and I will see you all at the Christmas tree lighting and the Christmas parade. Have a good night, everybody.